Welcome to today's conversation at Team Her Spirit, and I have the amazing opportunity to welcome a phenomenal guest in Louise Jones. Louise Jones is a sport and performance psychologist. She's supported athletes, coaches, performance directors within British sport over 20 years. Louise, welcome to today's Her Spirit conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Helen Jenkins, and I'm going to be talking to Louise today. And me and Louise worked together for a really long period, so it's always lovely to sit down and chat with her. We're really good friends as well, and she probably knows way too much about me. But today we've got questions from our Team Her Spirit athletes, and these women are women that are taking on really big endurance challenges this year. We've got swimming, we've got ultras, we've got Ironman, we've got really long bike rides. So these women are preparing physically the best they can, and we put to them what questions they have for a sports psych, and we've got some really good questions. I've tried to group them up, so we've covered everyone, and I'll just jump in straight away. And our first one, and it came up quite a lot, was imposter syndrome. We had a lot of women that this was one of the big topics that they thought of, and one of the examples here was, it was a really good example, was when they're running, they seem to self-sabotage themselves. They think they've got a couple of miles to go. They think, I look really slow and really silly, people are watching me. They're thinking, God, I could go faster than that. And then this makes that lady go even slower, and at the end she's really annoyed with herself that she let those feelings get to her and kind of listened to those voices in her head. So Lou, do you have any advice for our women that are maybe dealing with that imposter syndrome?
Yes, I do. One thing I wanted to start off by saying is that I am just admire and appreciate all the courage that these women have to go out and put themselves in those challenging positions. Part of that is really learning a lot about ourselves when we do that. So I want to just give them all a high five and go, yes, you can do it. This is great. Keep going. You're amazing. And I think, having a cheerleader on your back like that's really helpful from yourself. And with that, one of the first things in terms of imposter syndrome is knowing that there's a lot of talk about imposter syndrome, not just in the sporting world, but also in the corporate world in which I work as well. So it's relatively normal, especially from females who are putting themselves in areas of growth and pushing themselves out of their comfort zone. And they do feel like that, and we all do, to a certain degree. And because we're not perfect, we're humans. None of us are perfect. We try, and hell's you got pretty close at times, but you're not. None of us are perfect. And what's important to realize with that is that actually some of those thoughts are relatively normal. You're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, so there's a threat response happening. So that voice in your head will be saying some of those things. And one of the key things to come back to is to really lean into and understand your why. What are the reasons behind why you're doing what you're doing? Why did you decide to do that ridiculously long cycle ride? Or like Mel, you talked about earlier, your swim across Lake Windermere. What were the core things that made you want to do that? And then come back to that, because that's really visceral. It's inside you. It's internal. It's a feeling, and it's really powerful. So use that, and the rest of the stuff becomes smaller and less important, because you're going to what's really powerful and meaningful for you.
And I think that what you touched on, Lou, is that so many people feel like that is completely normal. And so I've been at the Olympics on the start line, and I felt like that, I don't know if I'm meant to be here, or everybody has those doubts at some point at whatever level. And I watched the Olympics last year, and I look at these athletes, they look superhuman, they look amazing, they're meant to be there, they're at the top of their game, but they have those feelings too. And I know, because I've been there, and I still look at them and think that. So I think even knowing that it's normal and that other people feel it actually gives a little bit of comfort, especially to me.
And that why point is a really interesting one. And I say time and time again, and coming back to your question of Windermere, my why was very clear. It was a challenge called Mel versus Arrest. We were raising money for cancer. So Lucy Gossage's, charity Move Against Cancer. I can't comprehend what it's like to have cancer, and knowing that people within my support crew had breast cancer. So when it got hard, then I just had to think, using Lucy Gossage's kind of analogy, it's my privilege to suffer. And being part of that why is a really strong, empowering thing. So 100% on the why.
And I think using that and having some quotes, some phrases, some images that go alongside that you can use, that's really helpful. And then the other thing that is quite important with some of those thoughts, the negative thoughts that come into our head, is that actually knowing that they are normal, they're going to come in, you're in a challenging position, is there's some acceptance around you, you're going to have those thoughts, and actually you've then got a choice of what you do with those thoughts. You can attach to them and it's really unhelpful, or you can stay detached. And it's kind of thinking about thoughts like they're waves, and actually you can then let the thoughts come and go, and you can choose which wave to surf, which thought you want to attach to that's going to be helpful. And I think one of the things that is important to remember about thoughts is that they work in addition, not subtraction. So you can't get rid of thoughts. If you think, don't think of this, don't think of that, don't think of a pink elephant, Hals, don't think of a pink elephant, you're thinking of a pink elephant, right?
Yeah.
But if you put in what you want to be thinking about, that'll then get rid of those thoughts. So really kind of plan and prepare what you want to be thinking about in those moments when you know they're going to happen, and put those thoughts in there. It might be a smile of your kid's face as you're running, or imagining what they're going to say when you finish the race, or what you're going to eat, have a nice big burger with onions afterwards, after your long bike ride. Whatever it is, the things that just keep you going through the race to just lift you a little bit.
Yeah, and so we had some questions on that negative thinking, which links in really nicely. One of our athletes was when faced with steep climbs, this is her really big issue. She's fallen off on these steep climbs before and gets really worried every time she gets to a steep climb. Those negative thoughts overcome and she gets really focused. And another athlete, just like you were saying, Lou, was like, that negative self-fulfillment of like, don't look at your watch, don't look at your watch, it's not going to be great, don't look at your watch. You look at your watch and then it's like, oh no, it's not what I want, it's not what I want, and it causes us to stop. There's so many athletes dealing with these kind of issues.
And I guess it's part of this is that we're human, we're not perfect. So give yourself a break when you have some of these thoughts, because what can tend to happen is you'll get annoyed with yourself. You go, oh, I knew I should have been thinking about that. And then that's another negative thought after that other negative thought. And then you're in this cycle. So, use humor is really important in that. Laugh at yourself, because we're all having these thoughts. You're not alone, like we said at the beginning. Hal's had these thoughts leading into, I don't know how many Olympic Games you went to, ridiculous number. So, it's normal. It happens at every level of being an athlete. And then also one of the things, like in terms of you're doing a lot, you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone. You're doing a lot of work physically, right? You're training. You've got the equipment. You're learning on the nutritional side. So before you go out to training session, you're preparing, you've got all the right kit on, you're warming up and stretching, you've got your gels. So there's part of this is actually preparing your mind for what you want your mind to say to you, right? Because whatever is happening up in your head, you're more likely to come out in your body. So if you're saying don't look at your watch, you're more than likely going to look at your watch, because the brain doesn't remember the word don't. So put in there and plan and prepare what you want to be saying to yourself. And that there's going to be some challenging parts of whatever training session you're going to be doing, whether it's going downhill, whether there's some cornering, whether it's a hill rep, whatever it is, there might be some areas that you struggle with. Knowing that, plan for those and plan for what you want to be saying to yourself at those moments. And that could be positive words, or for you, Hels, you did a lot of technical words as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and it's still something I use today, is that planning for thoughts and which thought to attach to. And as I've used it in my career, and now I use it actually with my kids when they're struggling with something as well, of something.
Your own parenting, when you're parenting.
Oh, yeah, like my little girl struggles getting to sleep. It's late, it's late, it's really late, it's really late, it's really late. It's that big. So we think about, right, it is late. So when you think it's late, what thought you're gonna say after that? So we've been really practicing that, and I'm amazed as well. Like, it works. It's like, of course it works. It works when I do. Of course it works. It's and I think especially with cycling, as one of our athletes mentioned, that it's a technical sport, isn't it? There is risk with it as well, because so we do a lot of riding indoors nowadays, which is brilliant because it's safe. You get out the bad weather, but then when we do get onto the roads, it can be nerve-wracking. So I used to have especially on descents, like if I had a crash, be very nervous and tense. So I'd have I know what to do on a climb. I'd have to think about the technical aspects of what to do. But then because I do know that, I just need to relax. So for sometimes I'd sing. That would be really helpful, like to distract myself on a descent. Or, when I'm having those negative thoughts as well, maybe, oh, it's really steep. Oh, I'm not doing very well. Oh, this is really hurting. It's like, well, like a really short sentence to say, or like a little mantra. It's like, if it, like for me, it was like, if it's hurting me, it's hurting everyone else too. Did that used to kick in?
Which songs, Hal, did you sing?
Oh, just I don't even know, whatever was on my playlist at that time.
Yeah, so mine have similarities. I remember doing half Ironman in Mallorca, and again, lots of descents. And I remember having a conversation with Chrissy Wellington before. So for those that don't know Chrissy Wellington, a phenomenal Ironman athlete. And my song is always look on the bright side of life. And so I would be singing, always look on the bright side of life, because it's that hypnotic, also kind of funny kind of thing. So that's my gift to you, Helen. Always look on the bright side of life when you descend.
Well. That's a really good one. But I think those little things help. And as practicing that, mentally training your mind for those tough sessions or tough moments, because they're going to come, aren't they? But you're taking on these big endurance events. No one has a good day the whole way through. There's always going to be points where those negative thoughts come in, or something goes wrong. So I think that's it's really good advice.
Or choose to go sprinting, because you already have them in like a 15-second 100-meter race.
Yeah, there's not enough time, is there?
Also, if you're practicing them in your training sessions, that is what you want to be doing while you're racing as well. So you're getting your brain into the right habits. So preparing for what mindset you want, and then doing that in training means you're easily able to do that under a bit more pressure when you go and do your race.
Yeah, and our next question actually was help with controlling emotions. So some of these, the first one especially, was emotions before the start. This was for an athlete who was like, how am I going to control my emotions before the start of the swim? And then other points within this were refocusing if you're kind of struggling with the cold. This was from the swimmer as well. I think that emotion of when you realize how much you've got left to go, and this is going to be relevant for all our athletes, when you kind of look at your watch and you think, right, okay, I've done 10 miles, I've got over 100 left to go, or on the run. I think those emotions around how big these challenges are.
I mean, emotions is a big topic. But we do, when you come back to kind of your why, and Mel, when you talked about your why in terms of like, how emotional, I felt emotional when I'm just hearing you speak. So you come back to your why, and it is emotional. So we're not going to be doing this without emotion. And as well, there's also, and I'm going to put it out there, in terms of when we're in our 40s, 50s, like I am, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on with our hormones as well, whatever it's doing, perimenopause, menopause, or whatever it is. There's lots of stuff going on for us. And there's lots of stuff in our daily lives that are going to creep into our sport as well. And it's probably part of the reason why we go off and do it, because it's our space to be us and re-energize for the rest of our lives too. So some of the stuff is we're going to be emotional. So, and we're humans. And being human means we're going to be emotional. And when we talk about emotions, we have lots of different emotions out there. So I think it's worth having a think about when people are going, how do I deal with emotions? Okay, what is it? What emotions are you wanting to deal with? What's going on? Because there's about 34,000 emotions out there, right? So there's lots, and we deal with it all the time. And normally you will have more than one or two emotions at a time. You might be frustrated, but then you've got a bit of anger and maybe a bit of disappointment in there, or you've got joy and happiness and pride going on all at the same time too. So it's worth kind of unpicking what kind of emotions you're having at the time. And then it's about, I love emotions because they teach us so much about ourselves as individuals, and the emotions we feel are ours. And every time we feel an emotion, it is absolutely valid to have that emotion. It's then about what is it that happens after that? What's our response, our reaction, our behavior to do with that emotion? And that's the bit to really work on. So if you're angry, whatever it is that's made you angry is absolutely valid to feel that anger. It just might not be valid to punch someone in the face. unless you're a boxer, and then it is actually valid, so go nuts. So it's really thinking about what is it afterwards, because it's very hard to control and stop any emotion, because it's a very internal experience, and the neural pathways are working super quick. We're not going to be able to do that. So it's about working with our emotion. Also, if you ignore emotion, it's going to get louder, right? It's like a kid that's asking for its parent, mom, dad, and you're ignoring them. They're just going to get louder and more annoying until you acknowledge the kid, right? And that's what emotions do. So I tend to kind of use the analogy of you're in your kitchen and you're making up a tea, and there's a knock on the door, and you open the door and there's frustration. And if you shut the door again, what's the emotion going to do? It's just going to literally keep knocking on the door, louder, louder and louder, banging. And that cup of tea is not a fun cup of tea to make, and you can't sit there and relax. So the easiest thing to do, and also if you keep ignoring them, they'll come in through the back door or up in a window, without you knowing, and they're there. So the best thing to do is when you open the door to go, hey, come on in, frustration. I've got joy, pride, sadness, a bit of depression, disappointment in there, but they're all in here. Come on in. You can come on in.
Bit of inside out.
But yeah, it is exactly like that, right? And I love that image, and it's brilliant. I use that a lot with kids. It's great. So, and you can still make your cup of tea, right? And you can still I'm still going to get on with my day. You can just be in here.
Yeah. So it's not so much about controlling the emotions. It's about accepting them. And especially at those crucial times, maybe at the start of a race or at the start of your event, then there will be emotions there. And I think it's acknowledging, right, there is I am scared. Come in. Yeah, we're here.
Of course I am. This is what I've been training to do. Of course I'm going to feel like that. That's okay. I don't know, Hels. I don't know any Olympic athlete or Paralympic athlete or any athlete who's not scared going towards an Olympic Games, who doesn't have fear. And the power of that is understanding that actually you can perform with fear. So I work with athletes at really kind of high risk. So I work with Jenny Jones, the slopestyle snowboarder that got bronze medal in Sochi, and there's no way she's not having some sort of fear jumping off those jumps and riding those rails, right? But it's learning that actually you embrace it and you fully commit to what you're doing. So you use it, you lean into it, you make it your friend. It's part of you.
And I always think, like, you would get to that point before an event where you always want to turn around and run away from it. You think, oh God, I actually don't want to do this. I don't want to stand. But then the thought for me of not doing it was always way worse, because you don't have to. None of us have to do this. You can just get to the start and go, actually, not going to do it. But deep down you don't want to do that. So it is easier to go, no, right, accept this, bring it on. I think, and as I got better and older, dealing with like the emotions before races, almost in the end, I almost relish those last few days when you get those feelings. You can feel it in your stomach, the nerves, you can feel that tension coming. It's like, yes, this is it. This is race day. This is what it's about. And then I got less about wanting to run away from it and just kind of leaned into it and embraced it, because that's what racing meant. I mean, a part of me still wanted to run away.
But they come with energy. Emotions come with energy. So why not use that to help you run in the direction that's going to be helpful, not away, toward the finish line, rather than away, right? You might, or fight the emotion, use it to help you perform. And like you said, you're changing kind of your mindset in terms of when you feel like that, it feels uncomfortable, you don't like it, so you don't want to have it. But actually, if you associate those emotions with being ready to race and being excited and up for it and go, oh, hey, yeah, that's scared. It's making me, that's my brain telling me I'm alive. Let's go. This is what I want to do. And I love this. Let's do it. You're changing the association to those emotions, and then it feels much better, and it will help you put that energy on. I know Mel's like dying to.
Yeah, and I've been listening, and it's interesting around emotions and different emotions. And I listened to a podcast recently with Dr. Stacey Sims and Mel Robbins, and they talk about stress. And we're obviously talking about psychological stress in this instance. And it's a really good thing, because you're training your brain and your body to understand that many of the emotions that we feel and women at Team Her Spirit feeling are good, because actually that's stretching, that's challenging you to kind of be yourself. One of the conversations that we had earlier was when I signed up to do Chase the Sun kind of last year, so a 6 months kind of post hip replacement. And the emotions that I had to start with were ones of excitement, because I was taking on a challenge. So they were all positive emotions. But 130 miles in, It was one of just feeling that I had failed because I hadn't got to the end, and I felt really low because I always want to achieve what I did. But I think that reflection piece is the really important one. It was the reframing. I said I didn't fail. I got to 130 miles, which enabled me to get fitter, stronger, better, and I had a go. And it's important to know that doing something and sometimes not getting to the destination that you wanted to isn't a bad thing, because you learn so much, Louise, don't you, about yourself in that time, and the importance of self-reflection, the importance of having great people around you. And I think also the importance of not letting noise in. And I use an example that there was a woman that had made quite horrible comments to me on social media, that I was reckless, I was irresponsible, 6 months total hip replacement. I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. And it's like, that's not my problem. I've done what I want to. That's kind of yours. And not letting that in. I think, look, there's a lot in that question back to you, but choosing the way that you feel about those emotions is your choice, isn't it?
Yes, and as you're talking, it's amazing what language does when you think of the word failure. It just, all of us are like, oh my God, that word is just horrific and horrible. It doesn't feel great at all. If you change that to learning, you can see all of us are going, yeah, we can do that. That's fine. And that's all it is. If you can change that, if we're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, we're doing something different, new, we're trying stuff out. We don't know ultimately how it's going to go, but all we can do is learn. And how cool is that? And I think, the older we get, the less experiences we have to learn new things, because we tend to like our comfort areas and where we're good, so we feel good about ourselves. Whereas you see, kids when they're learning to walk, they're up and down the whole time, and they're not bothered. They just keep trying it out until they get it right. And they I guess you could say they fail a lot, so they learn a lot. And it's not, failure is just another way of learning. And I think it's then, what lens are we looking through? What language are we using to help ourselves when actually we're just, every day is new. Yeah, I've got 2 teenagers, but every day is a new day with them that I've never done before, and I've never parented that day at that age ever again. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I just hope, they're doing all right. I really do. I try my best, and that's all I can do. But every day is new. We haven't done, I'm 47. I don't know what being 48 ever is like. That's going to be a new year for me. And every day of being 48 is going to be different and new and learning. So, it's about what lens we're looking through and what's helping, what lens. And we can absolutely change those lenses. Like you said, that reframing.
I think we're so tough on ourselves as well. Like you said, a failure to do, you got to that many miles. And then it's like, most people are like, oh my God, like 6 months post surgery, you got to that. And for these women even entering these events and taking them on, the majority of people aren't putting themselves out there and putting themselves on the line. And there's so much respect that you're doing that, and you're putting yourself out there, whether you achieve your goal of finishing or not. I think it's just so amazing. But then I think in ourselves, we're the ones that are hardest on ourselves, aren't we? I think, and it's that reframing is really important. And sometimes it takes a little while, but I would say it's focusing on the journey and what you're doing and what you're enjoying along the way. Because although like not all of us are going to get to our goals, it just doesn't happen, circumstance whatever. But it's like focusing on the great things along the way, the amazing training you've done. You've got fitter, you've made new friends, you've connected with other women, you've done things you didn't believe possible. So even if you don't get to your goal, I think it's really focusing in on what's been positive on that journey.
The other thing that's coming to my mind as you're both talking is the importance of kind of managing our own energy. So we've got the amount of energy to deal with those emotions, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, enabling us to do long training sessions. So we've got our physical energy, but we've got this kind of emotional energy too. And I think it's really important to kind of understand where you are in terms of that battery, because if you're doing long training sessions, it takes a lot out of you. So to have the energy to then manage everything else in your life is really hard, whilst going towards a big goal that you've set yourself too. So it's really about understanding where your energy is and what renewal activities you can do. So sleep is obviously a massive one, what you can do to get good quality sleep, but also what can you do during the day that gives you energy back, whether it's going on a nice walk, or sitting in the sunshine, or having a pizza, or socializing with your friends, or doing a really fun podcast in the morning on Friday at 9 o'clock. Two wicked women. What is it that gives you that energy? Maybe it's calling your sister up, or your brother, or your parents, or whatever it is. Think about what are the activities that are important to you, and it will be bespoke for each individual. Those renewal activities keep you going. Because I can imagine, Mal, when you were going through all of that experience, it was exhausting and knackering at times.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that energy in, energy out is just as important on the physical as it is on the emotional. And I always talk about mood hoovers, try and dissociate yourself with the mood hoover, the person that drains you, and look at, the radiators. Who are the radiators that you can stay around and get that warmth and in emotion from? And I think as women, we tend to do it for the love of others before we do it for the love of ourselves. And we really talk a lot about that at Her Spirit. But I think the important point on that is, who do you need through the journey that you're on to be around to help, to give you that energy? And it's okay to be open, and it's okay to be vulnerable. And we talk a lot, and I'm a massive fan of Dr. Brené Brown, who talks about, until you're truly vulnerable, will you be your best self? And I think, Helen, that's the context of this, isn't it? That we've got women that are going on a journey that feel vulnerable, that feel stretched, that feel emotionally, kind of strained. And Louise, we talked a lot about emotions and many other things. If you were to say a 3-step toolbox, and I've listened to people like Steve Peters, is there almost like a toolbox that women can say A, B, and C to help me through that thought process?
In relation to what outcome?
Just being able to control those emotions. I guess the first one is, it's okay to be emotional. Second, I guess that kind of choice. I don't know if there's anything through the people that you've worked with that, again, you just get them to kind of stop. So I can use my example is, when I'm in that fright or flight stage, having had the support of an amazing woman called Deirdre Anderson, is stop, look at what you can see, look at what you can smell, look at what you could taste and kind of hear. It's that calming down of your sympathetic kind of nervous system. Is there any thoughts that you have on tools of the trade?
I mean, that's a really good grounding exercise, which is what you've just explained, which is really helpful in that moment to calm yourself down. There's different situations that would lead to different toolboxes. When you're dealing with emotions, I would tend to use the toolbox from the acceptance commitment therapy. And Russ Harris tends to talk a lot about that and what he uses. He's really, if you've got any podcasts from him, I'd listen to what he says. He's brilliant. But it's the first one is kind of noticing. You notice what's going on, because it's the awareness is the first piece, right? You can't deal with it unless you're aware that you're in that place. So it's really notice in terms of the emotions. The next one would be name the emotion. So you're actually understanding what it is. And then that you're kind of going, okay, and then navigate what's the reason why you're having that emotion.
I just try and put myself into that now. So standing on a start line, or actually maybe not the start line, or that kind of before you kind of head there, maybe that hour before, it's that your heart rate's higher than normal. You can probably feel it. And I'm quite good at putting myself back into that environment. I can really imagine how it feels. And I'd say that's really good for our athletes to do as well, is visualize how you'll feel at that time, or how you want to feel is really important. So if I can feel I'm getting too anxious, like bring myself back down. But I'd be thinking, I can definitely feel fear of what's to come. So that would be one of the emotions, like that anticipation. I don't know, there's so much kind of going on, isn't it? It's almost like that whirlwind. So really important there to kind of pause and calm down. But I think as well, having that plan, I think plans are amazing. That plan of how you want to be feeling in that hour before. I think knowing that there will be things going on, you will be feeling maybe a bit anxious, and I've always felt if it's going too far, if I was letting it's building too much, then I'd have to kind of bring it back down. But that's really both of those, the grounding and being aware to calm yourself down, then the naming of the emotion, that would be really helpful to do in those situations. When is going to be the most sort of stressful time? And sometimes that is before you start, because once you start, you're in it and you're going, you kind of your training kicks in, it's what you've done. But before you actually get going, I think is one of the most emotional maybe time.
In terms of if you're talking about anxiety then, and a toolbox around that, and dealing with stress as you're all like you said, your sympathetic nervous system's kicking in probably the week before, and then just continues to increase. Like you said, Hals, we did a lot of work around that plan, like the day before and race day, and you'd write out what your physical warm-up is and your physical plan. We'd also put then a psychological plan alongside that, which would allow you then to be at that right point when you start your race. When you feel stress, we talk about breathing quite a lot and having a breath pausing. The easiest way to turn your sympathetic nervous system off and switch into your parasympathetic nervous system is a physiological sigh. And you can, yeah. Well, you kind of go up twice, so you kind of breathe in, and it's got to go. You both went chest first. You got to belly breathe. It's got to look at you straight up. I mean, that's your sympathetic nervous system tapped in right there. And you think, what are you doing? So yeah, so you want to do it from the belly. You can't see it on this screen. So you want to do it from the belly, and it's kind of get the belly out, and you breathe in, and you stop for a little bit, and then you breathe in again, and then you bring a really slow breath out. You can Google it or whatever, but there's loads of videos on physiological sighs. That's the easiest way to go from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic. And it's a really simple, do it a couple of times, and then
Women watching are doing it now, aren't you? Doing the breathing.
no, like, yeah, you've got to relax this top bit here. Because that's the bit. Because if someone like, I'm just imagining one of my kids just going boo from outside a door, which they do regularly for me, and I'm like, can you stop doing it? And they give me a shock, and the instant breath you have is up, like, isn't it? That's the bit, and you don't want that. You want to be relaxed, so it's got to come from the belly. So notice when you're doing, maybe do it in the mirror. I think we all need to do it, and do it from the belly. It's having that breath from the belly coming out, because you're then using all your lungs and going down to your diaphragm, and it's in again, and then out for a really slow breath out. And so do that. Yeah, go on, House.
I want to go on to the next question because I could have written this one myself. Scared to be positive was the title. So I really want to reach my goal, but I'm so scared to be overly positive in case I can't reach it. With that in mind, could you use visualization to kind of help with that? But I mean, that's something I felt for so many races. Like, you're scared to be too positive. Even though I was really fit and going really well, and I almost used to write myself like a goal, what it might be, and then just cover it up and put it away because didn't really want to look at it. I wanted to acknowledge it was there, but I was like a bit too scared to actually look at it in case I jinxed it, which sounds ridiculous, but
it's quite normal at the elite level. Lots of jinxing and
yeah,
all those types of things. So I mean, visualization can help. I would first go back to the goal, and I know we talked about this a number of times, Hels, over the however many years that we've worked together. In terms of goals, is there are different types of goals, and obviously, if your goal is kind of more higher end outcome goals, I want to get a gold medal, or I want to come top 3, or that type of thing. Outcome goals are relatively out of your control because it's also dependent on what other people do. And then you can have a performance goal, which might be more time-based. So I want to get this in the swim, this in the bike, this on the run. And again, they're pretty much out of your control because it can be dependent on the wind, the weather, the course, with how many flat tires you got on the bike, that type of thing. So maybe your nutrition. And then underneath that, you've got your process goals, and they're all in your control. So that might be, I want to get a certain, I'm working on this technique. So to make sure that on the swim, I am thinking about my high elbow for the first, to the first buoy. Yeah, absolutely. Chicken wings. So yeah, so it's really, so the process goals are the important goals because they're the ones you can control. So when you're thinking about your goals, make sure you're allowed the outcome and performance as long as you have your process goals. So think about that. If your anxiety is going up, it is normally because your goals are more outcome focused, or you're thinking about past and future, and they're pretty scary. So you're not in the moment. So think about that. And you can reduce your anxiety by coming back to what is it that I can control this race? And that is right. I just want to be relaxed and calm and smiling throughout the whole race. And I'm just going to then sing Always Look on the Bright Side every time. Thank you. Oh my God, what's the song? I'm going to say that all the way through. And then you can completely control that. So I think about what goals you're setting and are they within your control? I would also then, this is what we did a lot, Hals, and we had a whole Excel spreadsheet about what ifs, right? So before the race, at least 3-4 weeks before the race, sit down and write out all the things that are stressing you out. Like, what if this happens? What if my goggles come off on the swim? What if I can't get my wetsuit off in transition? What if I do have a puncture? How am I going to deal with that? And then so write them all out and then write out a plan for each what if, and they'll have a pattern for them. So there'll be 3 or 4 different responses, and then practice those as well. So if you're worried about having a puncture, you practice those punches so you can nail it. That's probably the wrong word to say, but you can fix your puncture as quick as possible, right? So practice those. So go through all the what ifs and go through those. So under pressure you can handle anything, even if the what if is, what if something happens that's unexpected? How would I deal with that? Once you've written those and gone through those, you then want to focus on what you want to happen leading into the race. And it's really important to focus on that. And you can use visualization for the goals, for the what ifs, for the what you want to happen too. So that's those are 2 things I think will be really helpful.
And I think that's a really good exercise for all of our athletes, is what is your goal? So that goal might be to finish, but then let's break down the process goals of what you want to achieve within that. And then the goals like remaining positive. Like, I think it's really nice to have goals that even if you don't finish, that you can achieve. So it's like, well, I didn't finish my event today, like for Mel, you didn't finish Chase the Sun, but I remained positive. I committed everything I could to it. And when times got hard, I used really good, I counteracted my negative thoughts really well. So even though you didn't maybe get to the end and finish, that you achieved some of those goals along the way, I think that's like a really, really good. And the what ifs are brilliant as well. I think that's it's a really good skill for anything you're doing, isn't it? I think even writing down those things that are worrying you is really important, because once they're written down, you can take action. And a lot of our athletes have a long way to go to the race. So I know for some of my athletes, what if I don't make the swim cut off? Is a big one. And some of those things are out of control. There might be, big surf on the day, which means, more people might not make the swim cut off. But there's actionable things you can do between now and then. You can do all your swim sessions. You can really focus on kind of getting in open water and practicing. So I think it's the what ifs even now. There's actions that you can take before we even get closer to them. So yeah, really good exercises there.
Yeah, and I think it's those controlling the controllables, isn't it? Planning enables you to be able to train appropriately at a time that makes it more achievable. They're all the things. And then the uncontrollable things is, how do you go through, I guess, a set of emotions? For me, when I swam Windermere, the biggest uncontrollable was the water temperature. And having not got to the end of Coniston as a swim 10 years ago, I probably hadn't exposed myself to enough cold water. But the thing that I try to reframe that water temperature piece is, well, what are the things that I can do to control that? I can have cold showers every day. I would, stand under the shower singing Club Tropicana drinks are free, because that was my song for cold showers. The other thing that I could do when I was swimming Windermere is I then had a neoprene vest under my wetsuit, because I knew that I could control my core temperature. But I also knew that if I trained better, I could swim faster, which in turn meant that I could generate more body heat. And then the last thing around that controllable piece was, the more you stop, the more impact that has on your core body temperature, e.g. the cold kind of relatability. And I think for me, I learned as much as I did on a success of Windermere, and I kind of use success because I'm happy to say I want to be kind of positive, and I want to be that woman that says it's okay to succeed, because that's really important thing, an attitude to have. But I learned so much through my journey with Chase the Sun when I didn't get to the end destination. But for me, the journey of getting fitter, not being a woman that was in chronic pain all the time, was invigorating, and it enabled me to be super confident and say, those other things that ordinarily, which would have debilitated me, I didn't succeed, I'm a failure, were things that I rationalized in my mind, because I've achieved a lot. I got to a point where I would have never even been able to do 12 months ago. So I think it's that reframing. And here's a question for you, Louise. Is it a female thing, or is it a British thing that we don't, want to think, we can do this, we're going to succeed, let's be positive?
There is definitely a British thing about that, and the research does show that for sure. I think the British tend to think about 5 negatives for every positive that we think about. Brilliant. Again, but it's individual again, right? So you'll have more positive people and more negative people. Again, to me, it comes back to what do you want to get from it? We can get into habits around our thoughts, and are we happy with those habitual thoughts we have, or would we like to change those? And we can get into new habits and new thoughts to have. We can write things out, put them on the fridge. We can have certain songs for every situation, by all accounts, whether it's shower.
Yes, well, I'll let you into my repertoire more.
I have so many more questions for you on which songs you have. Other things. I'm sure you've got some driving ones as well. And so it's really about kind of what is it that's going to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And, when you're talking, there's something about let's enjoy being in the moment when when you're doing what you're doing. There's something about, as you're swimming, in my head, I've got Dory from, he just keeps swimming. Things like that bring the humor, bring the lightness to what we're doing. You've decided to do these big challenges. Let's enjoy them. And what can you do to enjoy and have fun and have the social aspect and really lean into, oh my God, I'm doing something really cool and crazy and courageous. And, love the Brené Brown stuff as well, that call to courage. Absolutely. All that stuff. There's real power in vulnerability, and then embrace that and know that this is really cool for me, for anyone else, but and just lean in and smile.
And that was one of our questions, actually, like, will I complete my goal? I'm not sure I'm going to complete Chase the Sun due to injury, body falling apart. How do I take this journey forward without being totally disappointed? I don't even know if I'm going to manage to start, let alone complete it. So I think that's some of what you've just been saying as well, Mel. And I think is that what you just said, Lou, just courageous that you've even gone forward for this, and you have to take the positives from your journey, what you've gained along the way, and the
Guys
thing
need
is,
to
you
be
should be
flexible,
proud,
don't they?
proud of committing to something, because so many people don't. They just think it's too hard and they don't bother. Or, so I think it's just trying to be proud of committing and even going for these kind of events.
Yeah, and I think it's, goals, because there's so many uncontrollables out there, it's important that goals are flexible, and goals are our goals, right? So we can change them up. If they're not working for us and they make us feel gutted or disappointed, change your goal, right? We're in control of that. So if you can't do something because of an injury or time to do the training and fitness, or it doesn't feel like it's going to be a helpful experience for you, then change your goal up and notice what you've taken from the whole experience anyway, in terms of your journey, and what you want to do next. I know that every athlete heading towards an Olympic or Paralympic Games wants the preparation to that Games, you know where I'm going with this, house, to be perfect. But is it? Hell? No, it's not, is it? No, and it's a real challenge, and you learn stuff along the way about yourself, and it's a growth experience, and it's what you can take from that, not just about the race.
And I think I'd say this is, well, my goal was always to get an Olympic gold medal. I didn't achieve that. And for years, that was a failure. And I think in some ways, I still think, oh, it is a failure. But with the perspective and years of, and work on it as well, it doesn't just come naturally. You can end up really bitter about it as well. I'm actually where I am now, like to give some context, in London 2012, I was one of the favourites going in, had a huge injury leading into it, came fifth. And fifth is still, it's still good. It's still really, but I'm so proud of that race and the journey. And I'm actually glad now I didn't get that medal, because if I got the medal, I wouldn't be the person I am now, because I had to go so much kind of soul searching after that race to kind of figure out who I am, why I put myself through what I put myself, how I can be proud of myself. So I think and even if you don't, so we're not, but it's not just relevant to people going to the Olympics, it's relevant to anyone putting themselves on the line for any event, because it's so easy not to do it. So whatever your event, put yourself on there. That journey, that path is hard and tricky, and you've got to be proud of that. And then it's those people along the way that help you, the connections you make. I think that's so important. So actually, sometimes the failure, in a way, makes you better as a person. It might not get you the goal, but it might make you kind of a better person as well.
And it's easier saying that later on when you've gone through that journey. At the time, it's hard. And I think as you're talking, I can feel the emotion having gone through that.
Don't start crying again, Lou.
No, I know. I think what people often, when I talk or present or people ask me questions, what's who's, what would you say success in your work is, or whatever. People ask me what's the most inspiring moment that you've had, and I said one of the most inspiring moments I've ever had is watching Hels run that race in London and come fifth. because of what she went through, and to have achieved 5th off everything you went through. 5th was absolutely phenomenal, gobsmacking, amazing. I don't think anyone in the world could have done that off what she'd been through, right? It was ultimately a gold medal. That was just the courage, the strength, what she'd been through to just get to the start line, let alone do that performance on the day and come 5th, was incredible.
I think it's about a growth mindset, isn't it? And we talk a lot about that. And in essence, that's what we're talking about, is all the women at Team Her Spirit, or women that are listening to this, ultimately have a growth mindset. They want to stretch themselves, stress themselves, and go on that, journey. And I think listening to part of this conversation, and I'm a massive fan of a thought leader called Eckhart Tolle. And Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now. The power of now is such the power thought. It's about being kind of present. And Helen, you're a phenomenal athlete, and you look through a lens of not getting to the journey destination of the Olympics, but you're two-time world triathlon champion. So in essence, it's the same thing, right? It was just on a different day. You won two, and you didn't then get kind of one. And that, I guess, that mindset piece that you've been on is because you have a growth mindset, and you look through that lens of going, yeah, I did really well.
I think so, and it's that, I think it comes with that reflection afterwards. But dealing with disappointment and not achieving what we wanted to do is really important as well, and it does it kind of motivates you to do other things, and it gives you compassion to others. There's so many positives that come from maybe not achieving as well, but it's it's all relative, and I say and I think it's whatever happens at that high level of sport, it completely filters down, especially when you're taking on these big challenges. It's really, I would think you should go for it. Ultimately, you've got to go for it, try and achieve it. But if it doesn't happen, there's so much like learning, and you've got to focus on the positives that come from that as well. We have got some other questions. This was a really good one, actually, on because I think so many people go through this, and I think in our age of social media, we think everything looks perfect and people are motivated all the time. How do you refocus, reframe your mindset when you hit a period of feeling a bit blah, a bit overwhelmed, like nothing's going right, that motivation's really low? And I think it's harder nowadays than it used to be, because you do have this constant, if you are on social media, this constant filter of people who are like out there doing it, getting everything done, and you're like, I just don't want to do this today. So how do you kind of overcome those sort of periods?
There's an element of we've always talked a lot about kind of plan, do, review, and that cycle. And I think it's really important to take time to review and reflect on how your training's going, where you're at, what you need to do to do the next training block even better, rather than just we get so stuck in the doing of what we do, and therefore we don't have any time to think about can we do the doing better. And I think it's really important to take that time to step out. So when you're having those moments of that might be an ideal moment to go, let's step out of it. What's going on here? Maybe I've been doing a bit of overtraining, and technically overtraining is really under recovery. So that might be worth having a look at, especially for these endurance athletes, and pushing yourself. What do I need to do to maybe put a bit more recovery time in? And that might be more helpful. Maybe I do need to take an extra day off a week. It's also thinking about the cognitive load as well, because training is exhausting, especially from endurance athletes. And then you've got all the other stuff that you're dealing with in your life too: work, kids, partner, life. And life happens. What's taking its toll out there as well. So spending some time just to reflect on the big picture, get some perspective. There might be moments of like that you just want to indulge in that, rather than fight them there. Go in it, lean into it, indulge, have an hour of just feeling there, and then it's okay. Do you know what I mean? That's okay, because you don't want to ignore that emotion, like I talked about earlier. I don't want to feel like this. Actually, feel like it for an hour, and then move on.
Yeah.
Indulge and wallow in that mud, and then go out, have a Wagamama's, and move on with life. So that's quite helpful too. And also know that you're human, right? Human is to have the highs and lows. Being in sport, you have bigger highs and bigger lows. Being an elite sport, you have major highs and major lows. And if you go through that, you're kind of doing it right. And and that's why I've always loved sports, a real kind of magnification of life. And you can really develop some awesome skills through that to support you in life. But know that we don't know the highs without the lows, and we don't know the lows without the highs. We don't know the good times without the meh times, and vice versa. So it's all part and parcel of life, and work with it, go through it, and it's okay. You'll come out of the other end, because everything does pass. Every emotion does paths. You don't just stay in happiness.
Yeah.
You don't just stay in sadness or
It's
anger.
normal, isn't it?
It will come, yeah, and
It's
go
normal to have that. Yeah, it's normal to have those periods.
through it. You're laughing at me when I said indulgent. You're like, yeah, I want to do that.
I just it's that I always think if you from whatever that happened at a race or event, it's like you've got a day to be woo, 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 yeah, this was awesome, or you've got a day to be like, ugh, I hate this, it's awful, and then you kind of refocus and carry on because it's like I think this was at the point where there's obviously the season has a lot of races. You might have 10 races in a season, so that but it's different. Those bigger days, like we used to talk about A races, B races, C races. The A races, obviously the big races, the big events are going to take more out of you emotionally. You need more days to prepare, you need more days afterwards to recover. But the smaller events, like some of our athletes have got like a little event like on the way there, then you don't need maybe as much wallowing afterwards if it hasn't gone well. It's just sort of dealing with the different emotions around event. But you've got to have time to, I think, if you feel bad, just sit with it for a little bit, eat some ice cream.
Yeah, the other thing, I don't know if it's come up in a question, is when you have the big events, make sure you have a plan for after the event.
Yeah.
Because we've always termed kind of Olympic blues, like, and post a big goal, when it's done, there's this moment of like, what next? And I've had goals and plans in my head for a year, 2 years leading up to this. Then what afterwards? So this is void to fill, and a lot of meh can come. I'm just using. There's obviously other words I could use for that, but I'm using your terminology. There's that can come into it. So I would often plan a good, what to do in those months. Plan a holiday afterwards. Plan some time with your loved ones, your support network that have helped you. Plan some really nice stuff that you want to do afterwards. So you've got stuff to look forward to no matter how that race has gone. You've still got a good time. I wouldn't do it the day straight afterwards, but I'd look at kind of the next week and the week after. Just have a plan so you know what to do. Even if part of that plan is, I'm just going to spend some time reflecting or a bit more time doing my garden.
Yeah, and I think and when you go from a really structured plan of like all our athletes have had their training plans put into Training Peaks, and then maybe when they finish their event, they're like, what am I doing? Where am I going? So I think just having a bit of almost keeping a bit of your structure as well, because this might not, for some of them, this might be the first event you do. This might be the first big one, but this is it. Like you're going to keep doing them and you have these other big challenges. We've got two more questions. They're kind of about sessions, and one of them was dealing with sessions and events that don't go to plan, like in the build up, because that's quite a big, we do get confidence from what we do, and I think a lot of people are very focused on the last thing they did. So if the last session went badly, oh my god, everything's falling apart. Within triathlon's such a tricky sport because you've got all three, haven't you? One that said, maybe the bike's not going well, or you've maybe struggled to get out on the bike over the last few weeks. It's like, it's terrible, I'm not going to do it. It's like, yeah, but look how other things are going. So it's just really managing when things aren't going to plan, especially leading up to the event.
Yeah. Again, there's some reframing around that, and now you're not just that one training session, and you're more than that. And it's not, your performance isn't just physical or psychological or technical or tactical. It's all of those things, right? And that's where you come back to your why and your purpose. That's key. So what is it that's motivating you? You've got your self-talk and the quotes and there's some songs. I'm sure Mel's got a song at that point.
Days.
Got a whole, stack. I can, when you do something like, in the cycling world, what's called the FTP test, mine's always the Foo Fighters. That's your thing. So I'll put a Spotify playlist up for you. So you can kind of use it appropriately.
Yeah, there needs to be a Her Spirit playlist for sure. Pre-race playlist or kind of for moments. And I want to be part of that. So yeah, that would be great. Yeah, so it's all of that. And then there's give me the question again.
I think it's events and sessions that don't go to plan in the build up. And I say so much of this it feels like the advice is so similar, but that's because it's all that it is always coming back to your why, having that positive talk, plans for your
think about your good sections, right?
Yeah, it's so
think about your negative ones, think about your good ones. You probably have more of those.
Exactly. Yeah, you probably have and I heard this thing the other day about the rule of three, is it? So I think you say a third of this was about running, a third of your runs will feel good, a third will going to feel meh, and a third are going to feel bad. So if you go out and you haven't had a good session, it's like, well, only 3 of them are going to be, 3 of them in the week are going to be good, or a third of your sessions are going to feel good, and 2/3 are going to feel meh or bad. So it's just knowing that if it's a bad day, it's just one of those bad days. There's going to be good days as well. So I think it's just taking the week as a whole, taking the month as a whole, not focusing in on that one session.
And I think the other thing is, and Hels, and Mel, you'll both have this as well, is when you're leading into your bigger event, the threat response is bigger. So that voice in your head will be more negative, right? Yeah, the chimp is there. Absolutely. Loud and clear. And that's okay. So it's important to expect that and be realistic. It's something big and important that means something to you is happening. So when those thoughts come and go, oh, there you are. I recognize that. Knew you'd be here at some point. Welcome to the party. Open the door, have a cup of tea. We're all fine. We can cope with this, and move on to what you want to happen. So it's going to happen. It happens to everybody.
Yeah. But that's so powerful, is knowing that voice is going to be loud, and knowing that negativity is going to ramp up in the lead up to the race. I just think even just knowing that and going, oh yeah, I knew this would happen. But I can counteract this. I know what to do. I'm going to stay focused on myself, and and what my plan is, and what my process goals are. All of those kind of things is really important. Just one more question I had, and then we can go if there's anything else that you want to go back to or bring up. But this was when, and I think this again is more of a modern problem, but if you're really goals and stats orientated, so like you like to know what's going on the watch, you know all your, maybe you know your split times. Well, this athlete, she's really likes the stats and all the numbers, and the training peaks numbers started going the wrong way. They started dipping, and although there was logical reasons for that happening, it really affected how she was feeling about her training. And I think I do it I used to run with a watch. I used to run without a watch. If it said a half an hour run, I'd go out for a run, which I can't even contemplate now. Never go out without a watch, because it wouldn't be on Strava, so it wouldn't be real. But it's, you do get very focused on the pace. So I'm slower today, or I'm faster today, or that. So is there any tips on helping with maybe leaving the numbers noise behind?
There's an awareness piece here in terms of what is helpful, what's unhelpful. And again, that'll be different for everybody, but working out, right, is the amount of focus on data helping me now, motivating me forward? And if it is, great. If it's not, then change it up. I think it's really important, because when you race, a lot of racing is done by feel, especially if you want to be in the moment and enjoying that. And actually, the data might not be right, or the battery in your phone or your watch might run out, or it's broken, or you've forgotten the equipment that you've been relying on. So there's definitely, I would say, do some training sessions without equipment and go on and increase your body awareness of how you feel, because you can do more about that than actually the technology. I think it's really helpful to not be reliant on those things. So maybe question your reliance on that technology. And then if you feel you're too reliant on it, then just back off a bit and maybe look at the data less often, fortnightly, or don't get someone else to look at the data and just give you a summary of it. So it's about really working out what's helpful, what's unhelpful, and what you can use. We know that technology is everywhere, in everything.
That technology piece is interesting, isn't it? And Helen, we've had lots of conversations. It becomes a baseline of information, but ultimately, and I think this conversation that we've had over the last hour is about feel. It's how you feel, and if you feel great, and I know you're very passionate about the rate of perceived exertion, because one day you'll feel meh, and there's that the new the coaching kind of technical. Louise, we had another RPE scale. It's called Hard Plus. That Helen has kind of brought into it, but it's about tuning into self. And I think all of this conversation isn't it? It's about tuning into self. And if you can be your best self, and you've referred back to the why many times, look, my whys have been different on most events that I've done. Windermere was the why that I talked about, as I did for Chase the Sun. But many times it's about being my best self. And my best self sometimes will be a time. My best self will be sometimes completion of something. But it's about being able to thrive through this process, isn't it? Rather than be debilitated. And I'll always say your mind is your biggest inhibitor, or your biggest enabler. So how do you use it to be the latter and not the first? And you find your own coping mechanisms, don't you, through the conversations that we've had and people making it relatable to self.
And I think with that, the main thing about the brain is to keep it simple, and to hold it lightly. Because it doesn't, I think sometimes, especially as a sports psychologist, when people come and speak to me, they think I've got some mumbo jumbo, and it's like, and it's not. A lot of what I do is point out the obvious, and it's common sense. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. Why did I not think about that before? But we can get stuck in our rabbit holes and not see the bigger picture. And actually, we can make it really simple, and that makes it easy for us. And if we focus on our process goals and focus on the enjoyment and our why, and we can enjoy the experience of it, because that's why we're doing it. We've decided to do it.
Yeah, and I think the relation into that, and I guess it's going back to a lot of things that Eckhart Tolle talks about, is your ego. Your ego is not a good thing, because actually if your ego takes over and it doesn't actually then relate to self, then that's the thing that can be quite debilitating. I think, Helen, if we bring it back to kind of data, your ego, and I'm not going to name any names, but someone I swim with hasn't swum that much for 6 months, and he believes that he can continue to swim at the same pace that he swam at 6 months ago when he was training a lot. So his ego is going, but why am I not as good as I used to be? I guess that's the bad chimp, isn't it? It's saying, but you used to be like that. Why aren't you good enough? And the data doesn't correlate to what I think I should be like.
Yeah, and I think, as say, coming from an elite perspective, I'm never going to be as fast as I was. I'm never going to be, so in terms of goals, and as we age as well, it's not always going to be about being faster or getting faster, because we don't keep getting faster. Our bodies do kind of tend to slow down. So goals do have to change. And I think it's, for me, you're talking about like the why. It's like to enjoy. I enjoy fitness. I enjoy training. I like getting a little bit stronger. It doesn't have to be always a big focus and a big goal. So although you've got a lot of our women now have got these big goals of finishing events, I want you to think about those other goals in life, that everything you're doing now is contributing to being a fitter, healthier, stronger person physically, but also mentally as well. And these tips we've had from Lou today are just brilliant and are going to help you. Like I say, I use them in so many aspects of life. I'm lucky to have worked with Lou personally for, it must have been over 10 years.
Oh, we did juniors and under 23s together, and seniors.
Yeah, so it's been a really long time, and I don't actually, and you don't realize how much these things kind of kick in. Like I was saying, of helping my kids with dealing with getting to sleep. All of these things could be so relevant to every point of view. It's so helpful. Thanks, Lou.
I had one final point, which was really about, in terms of egos can be helpful in relation to understanding more about ourselves and our self-awareness. And what I'm picking up from what you said about this person who will not be named is that they have a strong belief in their ability, which then they can use, right? And I think my final point for all these lovely women on Her Spirit is, you wouldn't have decided to do these events if you didn't believe you could do it. So lean in and use your belief. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. There's no way that I would choose to do some ridiculous event that I didn't believe I could do. I wouldn't do it. But you're believing, you believing in your ability to do this. So lean into that, because you know you can. So have that in your head.
So you're not doing Ironman next year, Lou?
No.
Oh?
Only because I don't want to. There's loads of other things I'd like to do. I've watched, I've done a couple of triathlons because I wanted to. I know I could do an Ironman if I wanted to. I don't want to. There's no why for me.
Yeah, and it's all specific to each person. What's your why for that? I mean, to me, the long bike ride, doesn't click in my head. The ultra, that kind of thing, does the swim, but so it's all specific to you. And you've got to believe in it as well, isn't it? Believe in it and just go for it.
I'm with you, Louise. I have no desire to do an Ironman. We did a crazy challenge called Lakes to London, where we swam 5 kilometres in Windermere. We cycled from Windermere to London, and then I ran the London Marathon. So that will always be my Ironman. It's been an utter pleasure, Louise Jones, to have you in this conversation. I feel that I'm now part of the gang, so I can call you Lou. Lou, Hells and Mel. What a trio we've made. We hope that women find this kind of really interesting. And Lou, if people do want to understand a bit more of what you do, where would be a good place that they could go to just to connect with you a little bit more?
Probably to Hal's first. Speak to Hal's.
I'll send them on.
And then send them on to me.
Brilliant. Yeah, Helen, I think to close, it's been a great conversation. It's one that I'm hugely passionate about, like you are, is we know that Women at Her Spirit will love this. Helen, any thoughts to close? What would you say your toolbox was from the learnings that you had with Louise for many years?
I think a bit like Lou said, that when you think of sports, like, people are scared of it sometimes, think, oh God, what are they going to do? Dive into my head. But so much of what I did with Lou was, I think of as organising my thoughts, calming things down, making plans. For me, I'm quite an organised person, so always making plans around events, what I was going to think, what I was going to feel, what self-talk am I going to use, visualisation. There's so much there, but so much of it was just, for me, just calming everything down when that emotion seemed heightened, I think, was one of the biggest things. And we've been through so many of the little tricks and tips today that I've used with Lou.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you both. It's been an utter pleasure. And I've worn my Welsh glasses, and long may Wales return to their former kind of rugby kind of sense. Comparison is the thief of joy, ladies.
Nice end.
Welsh, they're looking for something Welsh in the room to wave.